What's out there? What creates the shadows in the corners or the creatures of the dark? Who are those on the other side? What do they have to say? This is the Gateway Podcast. This is not your normal style of paranormal talk radio. Brought to you live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans.
Hello, strange wanderers out there. Welcome to the Gateway broadcast from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas. It's finally gotten cold in Las Vegas, and look, I'm in a sweater. Can you believe it? My poor cat's all snuggled up too. He's right here, so you might see him in a little bit. When it's cold in Vegas, it means it's cold everywhere else, except for in Galveston, I think, in the Gulf Coast. I was just there, and it was still... oh gosh, I was able to swim still. It's that hot. And it was just hot and muggy. But the rest of you all bundled up, buckle up, because I'm kind of in a mood and we're going to talk about energy intentions, and there's no telling where this conversation is going to go. I'm just all over the place tonight. I got a cat and I got a really good guest tonight. His name is Greg Bakun, and he's with, hold on one second. I'm so sorry, my cat. He's with GhostBox Radio. He's a really good guest. But anyways, energy intentions are the idea that focuses your thoughts, energy, and actions on what you want to achieve and create in life. And then supposedly those things happen. This is based on the belief that your thoughts and feelings can influence your life's outcomes. A lot of people believe this. There are many famous authors, musicians, artists out there, just really great people who have really done great things using these concepts. But what does that mean when you put this to the spirit realm? We're going to talk about that. Let me get him on here. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm kind of in a mood tonight.
Uh-oh, here we go. Let's do it.
You just never know what I'm going to say tonight. I'm kind of in an off mood. There's a lot of crap going on in the paranormal world right now.
Yeah.
So,
but your cat is huge and amazing. So that's all that matters. So it's just beautiful. What's your cat's name? I'm sorry, I have to ask.
Oh, so that's Loki. And, you know, it's a funny story how I came upon Loki. I used to have this barn on my property in Nashville. And every year, it never failed, there was a litter of cats that would be born under the barn. And the last summer I spent in the house, no, it was actually the last winter I was in the house. This group of Maine Coons were born, and then the whole family disappears except for this one little itty bitty tiny cat. And so immediately my dog I have a golden retriever. She starts carrying this little itty bitty cat around. And then she starts bringing it in the house, and I did not want another cat. So I kept putting them back out. And then it dawned on me, this little cat, it's like this little itty bitty fur ball, and his ears were still down. Mm-hmm. He was too young to even eat on his own. So I brought him in the house, took him to the vet, learned how to bottle feed him. It was like every 2 hours I had to get up and bottle feed this cat. And now he's a great cat. He's my dog's cat.
He looks amazing. Just this big, beautiful cat that just wants to make sure everyone knows that he's there. That's all they do. So yeah.
Yeah, he's down here snuggling with my dog right now as we speak.
Awesome.
So you have a cat too, I assume.
I do. I have one. I'm looking out. This is my first day back in my studio, and I'm looking out at the French doors, and there's always a furry face looking at me who wants to join. And I just know his name is Linus, and I just know that Linus is well-intentioned, but he also is very much going to make everyone know that he's here as well. And that sometimes it's cute, and sometimes it's not quite as cute, you know?
Yeah, my cat, I can't even have a Christmas tree or anything because I don't know if he's just used to being outside. He's an adorable. I love this cat, and he's the most lovable cat I've ever had. But everything he has to climb on, and he just knocks everything down. And
Yeah.
but he's too cute to yell at. I can't discipline him.
No. It's just kind of, well, and they kind of run the show anyway, don't they? I mean, it really at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So yeah, that's
I,
kind of how it seems to me too. And so I just let him do his thing. Mine is of advanced age now. So, and
oh,
he's a rag doll, so not too far from Maine Coon in terms of size, but he has lost probably honestly about 70-75% of his body weight.
oh
And
no.
he's just he's coming to the end. It's just what it is. And so just trying to make life as wonderful as possible for him.
Oh, my golden retriever is getting up there too, and she's starting to slow down a lot. She's not liking walks, and it's kind of the same. She's going on 13, so it's getting about to be that time.
And Linus, I think, is about 15, 16, something like that. So
Yeah, I hate that, but I'll cry if I start talking about it. I can't talk
yeah,
about that tonight,
I get
especially
it.
when I'm in such a fiery mood. It's not going
Yep.
to happen. So, Greg, how did you get into the paranormal?
I started off being someone who loves the technology of it. I used to really love the devices, and I still do, just not nearly as much as I had done. I think the first thing that I ever saw that was really of interest to me, as far as like equipment wise, was obviously Spirit Box. And my show's called GhostBox. Everything I've done is Spirit Box related. Spirit Box is my jam, and ITC, intertransmental communication, is sort of the way that I like to investigate. But when I saw, and I honestly, I saw it on shows more than anything. And I saw the show using Spirit Box, and I thought to myself, if this actually works, then I'm in. I want to try it. So a friend of mine that I worked with in downtown Minneapolis, he was into this as well, but he didn't work at the same. He worked at the same company, but he didn't work in the same location. He lived out in Texas, but he'd come up like once a quarter or something like that. I said, next time that you come up, I'm gonna have a Spirit Box. Let's go downstairs in the creepy basement, and we're gonna try and see what happens. And so when he came back, I didn't realize how easy it was to get this stuff. I actually got my Spirit Box from Amazon. I had no idea about anything. And so we go down to what's creepy basement, and that's not a creepy basement. Everyone thinks it's a creepy basement who worked at the Wyman building in downtown Minneapolis. But, for people like us who have done this now for a number of years, we know what creepy basements are. I mean, sometimes creepy basements, it has lights. I mean, that enough should tell you it's not a creepy basement. But we go down in this area, and we put on the Spirit Box, and it's just an SP7, which I still think it's a very good device. And I didn't even have an external speaker to it. I just used a speaker on the device. That's what we just didn't know. And set up a camera, set up an audio recorder, and turn it on. And the first thing that I ask is, can we get can we get a name, please? And right away, it was Nate. Right away. And my friend and I, Jeff, we just look at each other like, okay. And then he asked, do you have a last name? And the name Lund came through, Lund. And like I said, we've never done anything before at all. And so we're pretty excited. We asked for an age. We got a number, but it wasn't an age. And then I asked, is there anyone else here that wants to say hello? And a female comes through, and she's just like, hello. And you can't mistake
You can't
it.
refute that, can you?
No. And so we were just like in awe. Downstairs, we got a disembodied voice. We got some draining lights, and then we went back upstairs. And at the time, I worked at an advertising agency in this building, and so we had a ton of cameras and stuff. So we set up cameras all over the place. But we went into a room that everyone said was haunted, and so we went in there, and I had the Spirit Box going again. And I said, my name is Greg. This is Jeff. Could you say Greg, and could you say Jeff? And right away, and all this stuff I have recorded, right away, I get Greg, Jeff. And once again, this is the first night, and we did this for about 2 hours. And 2 hours of getting all this stuff, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. There was nothing more I wanted to do from that moment on until I established, for lack of a better term, because that seems kind of an egotistical sort of way of saying it. But before I got really into the community, I was dreaming about being a paranormal investigator every night. From that moment on, every single night, I had this dream of going out and going to locations and investigating and talking to people. And right away, I realized that my way of doing it seemed to be a little bit at odds, in a sense, with the community around me. Not completely, but a little bit, because, and I think you've run into this, especially at events and stuff. We did an event in a place called Faribault, Minnesota, which is a south of the Twin Cities. And we were in, it was a group of people. I was at an event. I was asked to be out there. It was like my first time out in the public doing paranormal investigating. For years beforehand, I was just kind of doing my own thing. And it went really well. Did a round table. I played some of my Spirit Box recordings that people are blown away by, because most people didn't think Spirit Box was a valid form of communication.
Right.
And you still run into that quite a bit, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So, but sitting there, and this guy next to me, because I have Spirit Box going, is like, anyone wants to talk to us, and the guy takes the box, like you have to talk in the box to be able to, get recorded, get something. Just like, all right, whatever. Like, do you want to talk to me? And he says, you want to talk to me? And I took the box back, and I literally said to him, nobody wants to talk to you, because it's just what the hell? And that's the sort of thing because I started a small group. It's never been a big group. It was called Minnesota GhostBox, and it was always this isn't your story, this is their story. And it came from that moment, because I was so irate that somebody took spirit communication and decided that everyone has to be, whoever you want to say on whatever show you don't like. You know what I mean? That's all bombastic. Yeah. And it was like, no, this isn't about us. Unless it's about us. And I think you know what I mean by that. Sometimes it can be about us.
It can sometimes.
It can sometimes. But you have to, you go in, especially doing client work and stuff, it's not about you. Stop making it about you. So that's where I kind of got in, and that's where I created, the mantra for myself, at least, that, you always attract the energy that you want to be around. And so,
yes, absolutely.
All my friends, all the people I do my work with, we're all the same belief of how we handle clients, how we handle the paranormal, how we handle spirits. We teach classes. My friend Char and I, we teach classes on it. So, long story short, I guess, is, it started off just as communication. I still use Spirit Box all the time, but I also now believe that I can bring in mediumship to help bring forth who I want to talk to. And actually, it's not so much like, I hope we can get them in. It's like, I see you, I'm pulling you forward. That's kind of where how I approach it these days.
And that's how I work. Honestly, I go in and I'm not real interested in the stories that are associated with a place. I've noticed, like, a lot of paranormal investigators will go into a place. Goldfield is a good example. There's a story about a baby being thrown down the well, which that story is completely false. Mm-hmm. If you look it up in archives, there wasn't even a well on the property. The person that are saying that did it didn't, never was even on foot on the property, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter if it's a false story or not. It's not there. And that's what people always go in and look for, though. Mm-hmm. So instead, I like to go in and intentionally try to pick up on the spirits that are there and communicate with them. And it's almost never, and I do this at all locations, it's almost never what you see on television and investigators and what, what's popular, the pop culture stuff.
It is. And I think what frustrates me, I don't mean to cut you off, I apologize. But what frustrates me is that some of these locations, that's the lore that they want to protect. So, and I'm not saying about Goldfield. I've the closest I got to Goldfield was outside the building, and we just drove by, and that was that was amazing on its own, because I've always wanted to go in there. But there's places that are nearby where I am at that they don't want the truth out there about who these people are that they kept talking about for the last 20 years. And it's really because it might upset the balance of of what they've heard and whatnot. But I mean, the thing that I think most people miss, first of all, the places I'm thinking of are amazing locations. I don't think they have anything to worry about. And secondly, I think that's the thing that we seem to forget as a overall paranormal community, is that it evolves. Everything evolves. As soon as we learn more, it evolves more and more. So why not be like, oh, you know what? We thought this was the way it was.
Yep.
And, whoever responded to us with that name, they must have been, someone else, because now we found out this or whatever else. It shouldn't be a stopping point for a location. It should be a new direction, a new era.
Exactly. And who's to say, why do we stipulate that only one spirit can be known in a place anyhow? Especially with these old buildings that probably had 100 people go through them, right?
Yeah. No. It's incredible, isn't it? And some of these places they have like a number of them, which is fine, and that's great. But you're right, they're always very tragic stories.
Yes.
There's never one where it's old man Zeb and he died of old age, rich and happy. That you'll never get that at a location, because maybe people don't want to go to see Zeb, who is super rich and happy.
Well, it's funny you say that, because Goldfield is one of those places where everybody says, oh, it's so evil. There's a lot of evil spirits there. I have not once got any of that from Goldfield. Not once. I've always gotten really good spirits. One of them actually kind of helped me through a depressional phase, when I was there. It was that kind of direct communication. Yep. Another example is when I was in Virginia City, there's a place called the Silver Queen. Yep. That everybody says, oh, it's an evil woman that lives there, or not lives there, but occupies that space. And the communication I had with her, that connection I had, was such a healing feeling between the both of us that it's hard to put into words. It's, at first I had to get out from this woman. And it's interesting we're talking about ITC, because the get out, I heard it audibly. The camera that was in my hand did not pick it up, but I had another little recorder that did pick it up. And it's real echoey and everything. But later on, I tried to communicate with this spirit, and just briefly, we had a short connection, and it was like, wow. It was almost like we kind of melded together, because we both had the similar experiences. And it was just like we were able to let it all go at once. It was really cool how it worked out. So maybe our intentions when we go into these places, maybe the intention is, if you're looking for that bad energy, that's what you're going to pull out of it, instead of going in or if you're going in trying to film something and all you're looking for is that activity so that you can take it back and have something, evidence or whatever, that's the kind of energy you're drawing to yourself. You're really not drawing in anything else.
I agree 100%. And, a place that I've had a similar experience was Bobby Mackey's Music World, where we went out there. My friend Nicole and I were shooting for our web series at the time, and we went out there, and it was run by a paranormal group. They handled all the paranormal parts of the Bobby Mackey stuff, and the woman said to us down in the basement, where it has the big hole and the big well. And she said, just careful. Someone was down here last night and they got scratched. And we just were like, well, we're not going to get scratched, because we're not going to do what they're doing. I can guarantee that, without even knowing what they did to get scratched, we're not doing it. You don't just, I firmly believe you do not just get scratched, that you are provoking in some way to get scratched.
Yeah.
So, and sure enough, we didn't get scratched. People were, when I posted on Facebook, oh, we're going to Bobby Mackey's, people were just like, don't do it. Some people are like, I'm praying for you. And I'm like, it's fine, folks. It's all about intention. 100%.
That's part of the fun, though, of watching some of that stuff too, though, isn't it?
It is, but it's getting hard. You know what ruins it for me though, because it was fun, and I used to watch something like Ghost Adventures because it's like there's something kind of scary about some of this too. The problem is once we got into the community and how many people, and it didn't matter to me if they believed it or not, but that they were doing the same sort of things that the Ghost Adventures crew were doing. And it really blatantly went against the direction of where I think that that spirits should be treated better than that. And I have a theory that people who do excessive provoking actually don't believe in spirits.
Yeah.
That's always been my thought, is like, it's because it can look really cool to some people if you're in a dark room, yelling, if you don't believe. And then you get those moments when it actually suddenly something happens to them and they're just like, oh, this is real. Yeah, it is real. and you probably have an attachment, that's just how it is.
That's interesting. I do like that. I like Ghost Adventures. I watch it every now and then. It's a fun show to watch whenever, just for entertainment reasons.
Absolutely.
And, they used to go to really cool locations and stuff all over the place. But I remember the one show they had, and it's always my favorite one. I've talked about it before, where they used to travel overseas and they went to, it wasn't Bran Castle, it was Dracula's, the real castle that he lived in. And I forget the name of that castle.
I remember that one. Yep.
And I remember when he posted
Romania,
that.
Right?
Yeah. And you remember they posted that they were going to stay there and this and that. And it was all scary. And all his fans was on there going, Zach, don't do it. It was kind of cute.
Well, and it's there's a reason why that they're still the top when it comes to television. I think the way that they shoot the show is vastly different than all the other ones that, there are no other shows really, apart from now Off of Travel, and they there's more of a very cinematic sort of way that they tell their story and whatnot. And there's a reason, and Zach himself is a very good business person.
Yeah,
he's just very good at what he's doing, and being able to turn that haunted museum and everything else. And I think it's easy to and I say this about to myself, to rip on him and rip on them, but they know how to do it. I think where I get frustrated is that people take it at face value.
Yes, and that's the problem. That's the problem with it.
100%. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's like they don't know how to separate entertainment from real investigation.
They don't, and I won't like hold it against them if people are interested in knowing how to do it. Like, oh, that's not how it is because I've never done this before. I'm a newbie. Okay, let's figure it out. Let's show you some ways, or let me tell you about some other shows that are a little bit closer to how it is, or YouTube videos or whatever else. And I did an investigation out in York, Nebraska, at a mortuary. It was an event, and some guy walks in, and I hate to say this, this sounds really bad. He walks in, and you're like, you watch Ghost Adventures, because he is all platted out in the vest with all the equipment on his vest, and just all and sure enough, at the end of the night, because we all separated and we were in the basement and or in the back room, and we're doing an experiment with another group, and all the lights are off, and he's just like, all of a sudden he's like, I've been scratched, and I'm like, lights, and someone turns on the lights, and I go, where's the scratch? He goes, my neck. Well, look, there's nothing there. Oh, okay, so let's go back, and we start doing more stuff. I was like, my neck, I've been scratched. Lights. Okay, lights turn on, and look, yeah, this time you're scratched. Oh, wow, look at that. Look, that's incredible. And his girlfriend is like, oh, that's three scratches. That's a sign of the devil. Like, knock it off, first of all. And I'm trying not to embarrass him, but I just am like, I want to see your hands. And he's like, what? I'd like to see your hands, please. And he's like, this.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
can I see your fingers? Okay. He opened up. There's skin in his finger nails. He scratched himself.
Serious?
Yeah. Yeah,
See,
he
that's
did.
too much drama. That's you know, it's sad because it takes away from people who really like. I really believe in this stuff. I take this stuff really seriously,
Right.
and I go into these places, and I actually want to communicate with spirit. That's my goal. That's my intentions. That's what I want to do. I'm not out there to create a dramatic television show. I'm not there to gather evidence that doesn't go anywhere anyway, except for on someone's TV show. That's
Mhm.
just not my bag.
No. And I was nice, which annoys me when I do that. But I was like, because I kind of did it privately, and I said, you stop all this nonsense about being scratched and go, and I won't bring anything up to everyone else that you're fake. And just kind of, because it's like people are there, they're paying money. I don't want to cause a scene. But it is just like, come on, why would you do that? And like, do you think we're gonna look at you and be in awe? People were like, I think people are more afraid of him at that point because like, why would something scratch you when there's been no indication the entire night that there is anything negative in this location? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. We have a lot of comments tonight. I just want to give a special shout out to Jenny Davis out there. She's on here. She's a really sweet girl. She's been having a tough time on social media. Love you, girl. Michelle LeBaron, love you too. Joanne Stewart, how are you? Nancy Kelly. Let's see who else is on here. We do have a question. Somebody wanted you to tell a story of the doll behind you.
So that's obviously it's a nod to Annabelle from the Warrens, and the thing is about this is a vintage Annabelle or vintage Raggedy Ann. It's not Annabelle, it's Raggedy Ann. But I had joined the Warren Legacy Foundation as an investigator a while back, and I was going to be working on one of their live streams. So I thought, well, I'm gonna set up this, lack of a better term, studio, because I do my nightly radio show from here as well. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to get that. So I went to Etsy and I got a vintage Raggedy Ann doll, and it shows up a few days later, and it's no sooner than I literally take the box from the stoop, bring it into the front door. My friend Shar, who is a very gifted psychic medium, we do a lot of investigations together. We teach classes together. We work a lot together. And I get this message from her, and she's like, "What did you bring into your house?" And I'm like, "What?" And so I type back. I'm like, "A doll." It's like, well, God, what did I do? And I'm just like, well, of course it's a Raggedy Ann doll. And she's just like, well, it's just a different energy suddenly appeared, and I don't know what happened. And so ever since I got that, she said it's a male energy. Ever since then, when I come into the room and stuff, I always make sure to say hello. I don't ever just put the doll, like just put it on the ground or something. It's the doll's always sitting on something, even if it's not there. If I have to move it, I'm going to put it up so it's upright and stuff as well. That there's respect. And like I said earlier, I have French doors over here, and my couch is over against the window in the family room. And it seems like every time when the doors are shut and I'm looking back into this room, her face is like perfectly in a square of the windows, of the panes of the French door. And like, what on
That's
earth?
interesting.
Yeah, she's something. And as of yet, she hasn't jumped off and like started to strangle me or anything during anything. But and nor has she. She may have moved once. But and it was interesting too, because I had Robert L. Sloan on. He is, he has written about Robert the doll and stuff, and night that I was in here interviewing him, and we're talking about Robert, suddenly an article of clothing on me just gets pulled up. And, it was really just kind of like, what on earth happened here? And I don't think it's her. I think it's Robert the doll, actually, because I do know when you talk about that doll, you have to be very,
You
very,
do. I have a story about Robert the doll.
Yeah.
So remember the Hurricane Dorian that came through?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I was in Miami when that was coming through, and I was trying to get a car because remember it was going to hit that area, and I couldn't get out. I was stranded. I always seem to get stranded where hurricanes coming in for some reason on the East Coast.
Sure.
But I just got stranded in Nashville for a few days during that Helen.
Oh goodness.
But long story short, I rented a car, and instead of driving north because that storm was going to hit, I figured that Dorian was already past the Keys, and I had a friend that had a condo down in Key West, so that's where I headed. And lo and behold, the island was completely evacuated except for the locals, and it was fun times. I got to party with all the locals down there. But I got entry to go see Robert the doll alone and spent some time with him, took some photos. I didn't get a whole lot of energy off of him, though. I got a bunch of kids playing, that kind of thing, but it was very light.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have photos of him. I've sold a lot of those photos, and nothing happened. So it's interesting. It, like you said, maybe it's people's intentions somehow that bring out the darker side of that energy.
I think so. And I think when people, especially when it comes to something like Robert the doll, and you have that out there where people, it almost goats people to do it, right?
Yeah.
When you say, well, you have to ask permission. If not, maybe something bad is going to happen to you. And there's people who are going to be like, oh yeah, well, I don't believe that, and I'm going to take as many pictures as I want. I don't care. And I mean, it doesn't mean that something's going to happen or not, but it's just like that whole thing about like, well, I'm going to prove that, this doesn't exist. This paranormal stuff doesn't exist by doing it this way or whatever else. And, it just surprises me. I mean, I mean, I don't know about you, but I live in a situation where it's just like, you know what, if that's what it takes to keep things happy and calm, I have no problem being like, Robert, may I take your picture, please? As simple as that.
The doll itself is pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
It's down there. Have you been down there yet?
No, but I've done a lot of research on the doll and just everything about like the switching of clothes between and that's how he got his sailor suit and everything else. And it's such an interesting story about it. I love it. I love that.
Well, his owner is very interesting. Well, his used to be owner that has passed away, Robert. He's an interesting character in itself, and he is also from a very strange story. His dad was a physician. Robert was the only guy who was not a physician in the family. I think there was some conflict between his dad and himself over it. He became an artist, and on top of that, he was also homosexual, which wasn't really accepted back then. But he goes on and gets married for appearances. But his wife mysteriously disappears. She gets on a ship on a cruise somewhere and just completely disappears. It's a very strange story.
It's very, all that stuff is really interesting. And if I'm not mistaken, that's not really the only instance to do with Robert the doll and weird stuff like that happening, or including like wasn't his wife locked in a closet all night one night?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah, there was something where she was locked in the closet all night, and Robert didn't hear anything about it at all, and he found her like the next day. Nothing like not murdered or anything, just that she was just hysterical.
She just locked herself in there somehow, or the doll.
She believes the doll locked her in. And there was another instance of the doll doing the same at some other place as well. Once the doll moved out of the main house. And it's it's just like, that's enough for me not to mess with it.
Right.
That's all it takes. It doesn't take much for me to be like, yeah, I'm not going to push my luck with any of these things. I'm just
But
not.
then, just the fact that she just completely disappears too. I mean, what happened to her? Did
Yeah.
Robert have something to do with that? It's the strangest thing because in the cemetery, he's there. They have a grave for her, but she's not buried in there because they never recovered the body.
Never found.
There's a couple children in there, and then there's a couple of, I think they're deer that they had. If I'm not mistaken, they had a couple pet deers that are buried there as well.
As one does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so, and you know what? I mean, I don't know about you, but I want to believe Robert had something to do with that. I mean, it's just
I kind of do too. It just
right?
deliciously evil, right?
Like all can do that. And you know what? I live in a world where I believe that's completely possible. I'm not going to lie. If someone said to me, yeah, this hand puppet of Kermit the Frog strangled someone, I'm going to be like, I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen the stuff, I've seen stuff I've heard. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Keep them away from me.
It's interesting how our beliefs change. It seems like every time I experience something new, something that was true to me one day is not the next, So I used to believe, because I sat with Robert for a while and got absolutely nothing. I got more from the building than I did from Robert, honestly. But, all these other people go to it. At first I believe, well, maybe it's all their energy that they're putting into it, and that's what they're bringing back. And then I thought, well, I used to think, because I stayed at the Bell Witch Cave, this is another one.
Yep.
I got absolutely nothing from that cave.
Yeah.
Nothing. But everybody claims, that they've gotten all this negative energy or positive energy, whatever energy they get. There's photos of different things that happened in this place. There's EVPs, everything. Well, maybe now I believe that maybe it's not the building itself that's not haunted. Maybe it's just our intent that we're taken in that particular place that is able to, like, if you're constantly seeing demons and stuff, and I'm not referring to the Ghost Adventure show by any means, because again, that's entertainment.
Yep.
I'm talking about the real investigators out there. If you're going in and seeing demons over and over and experiencing scratching, maybe it's possible that that's your intention when you're going in there.
100%, without a doubt, because I've heard of people who will do that sort of thing, and like you said, it's just a litany of stuff that's happened to them, and what always frustrates me is I think people wear that as a badge of honor. Not everyone, but some do. There are some, I do believe, that are truly that they're truly terrorized by certain aspects, but then they tend to get help, and either it works, it doesn't work, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. But we're talking about people who are going into like the events or just the houses. And I've been to the Sally House a couple times in Kansas, and nothing's happened to me there. And that's another place where people are like, oh, this is serious and stuff. The only thing that happened to me there is we were in the kitchen, and I had one of my spirit boxes going, and turn it on, and you just hear through the spirit box, Greg. And everyone in the room, of course, just looks at me, and I'm like, can I help you? And all they said was cross over. And now that I say that out loud, I hope they didn't mean me to cross over. I guess I took it as me helping them cross over. But that's something I do, is I help spirits cross over quite a bit. But I never thought about that till now. I was like, no, not yet. I'm not ready. So that's what I did. And it's one of those things too, at a location that, sometimes people are like, oh, you can't cross over spirits at a location because that's what brings in, the people. And I firmly disagree with that as well. But yeah, the intention part of it is 100. I think you're absolutely right about that, because why is it always the same? I mean, like we said, we go to a lot of these locations. People are always talking about the negative stuff that happens to them. Meanwhile, we're going there, we're investigating, we're still getting reactions, we're still getting interactions, but they're not, no one wants to scratch or hurt or push us or anything else like that.
Right. It's interesting. We have a question from Michelle Wolfong. Spirit box and other equipment, or what spirit box and other equipment do you use?
So I mean, like and I've talked about this recently somewhere else too, because I get a lot of people asking, you, like, I want to do spirit box. How do I start and all this stuff? And there are some amazing people out there who are making spirit boxes now that I mean, once when I got into this, I never would have thought that there have been a lot of people who are just taking it on themselves to try to make things a little bit more affordable, also make some custom sort of stuff. But I still use the SB7 spirit box, the mass-produced one. And I know that there's going to be hardcore people using spirit boxes being like, really? There's so many better things. There's so many this, there's so many that. It really comes down to what you're comfortable with and what you get to work. And I just feel like I've gotten some great responses. I have a lot of great recordings. And you know, it's very inexpensive. I always tell people when they want to get into this and they're like, well, what kind of spirit box should I get an SB7, because if you really like it, if it speaks with you, if you have this connection to it, then get something else later. But don't start with like a $300 piece of equipment that you don't know necessarily how to use. Start small and get big. You know, and I mean, I have about 40 spirit boxes, and I'm gonna someday have them all in at once. No, but I just feel like that, you know, and with that, I just use like K2 meters. I use Ovilus occasionally, obviously a voice recorder. I use my body. They always say you're the biggest tool in the paranormal. So I used to have a lot more equipment, but I just don't. I don't feel the need to drag it all with me. It's a lot. And folks, remember, everything that you set up that records, you have to go through and listen to it again and watch. So if you have 4 hours of video, that's easily 8 hours of reviewing. So it's just like how much you want to do. And if you're just a one-person show, then you're going to be for the rest of your life looking at a dark room
videos.
Happens, yeah, pretty much.
And I'll tell you what, reviewing audio for hours and hours on end sucks. It absolutely sucks. It's so boring.
It is, and that's why I like doing EVP bursts myself. Just personally, it's just like, because at least then you have like a hope that there's something in there. And it's a lot of fun to do. I just, at this point, if you don't have a lot of people who want to help, and anyone who's been on a team knows that everyone wants to do the investigation, not everyone wants to help with the review process. Once, that's always the toughest part of it. And but if you get like one early on, that's adrenaline that kind of catapults you a little bit further in your 16 hours of review.
Well, I think it's important too to spend the time doing that review and pulling out the different, especially if you're feeling something or having an experience, you kind of want that validation that it really is something and not just you.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. No, absolutely. And also to take the ego out, and this is something I do have a bit of a problem with on occasion, taking the ego out and playing it for someone else and being like, what do you hear? And they don't hear what you hear. And it's like, but no, this is what they say. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You can't drive the narrative. You have to present a piece of audio or video and let the person try to tell you what they see. And if you're on the same track, that's one thing. But if it's like completely different, then you got to kind of figure out, well, what is this then?
Right. That's an interesting point too, because so many people want to hear their name or they want to hear a specific, and then, of course they think they hear the name, but when you play it back to other people, it doesn't say that. If you ever played the game Telephone, you post an EVP online somewhere and you'll get like 50 different 50 different comments of what that EVP says.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to spirit box, and there's a lot of just bleh, bleh, bleh. And so like my name is one syllable, Greg. So there's so much out there. It's just like, bleh. And it's like, oh, someone said your name. No, I don't think so. And so it's actually gets to the point where they might be saying my name, but I just immediately just assume it's not, because it just sounds like, it just doesn't sound like anything.
I think I want to point out too, you don't have to go to an expensive location to do this stuff. You really don't. You can go in your backyard even. It's all about intention, right? And drawing spirits to yourself. I believe anybody could do this if they just put their intent into it.
I think so too, and I think what's important though with that, in my opinion, is that you really want to be careful that like you said, your intention is very clear. Who you want there, who you don't want there, and then closing out the session, whatever you're doing, everything's a session. If you're just even doing an EVP or whatever else, and then making sure that we had this wonderful time together. Go home. You need to go back to where you came from. You can't stay here. Because especially if you haven't done this before, you got to be very careful. And I think that's where we run into a lot of issues with people who don't respect the fact that spirit doesn't necessarily do what we want them to do. But if you ask them, they should be able to do something. They should be able to do, like, okay, please, I will open up another session some other time to talk, but you have to leave now. That's the sort of thing that you should do. And it's just, I always tell people, just be careful. Just, don't be in your house and be like, trying to conjure someone in or something,
I would probably start with, maybe a past loved one that passed away, maybe get a message from them, that sort of thing. I know there's a lot of people out there that always say that they contacted celebrities and that sort of thing. I always feel like there has to be some sort of connection, though, to communicate with some of these entities. I don't know.
It's interesting because I try to show that you don't have to have a connection.
You do?
And that doesn't mean that I'm right, though I am. No, I'm just kidding. But but I also really like to show proximity doesn't exist either. I did
because there's no time and space, so you might be onto something.
Exactly. So because I did one, and I had recorded it with actually what we thought we brought in both President Lincoln and Mary Todd Lincoln, and Mary Todd was extraordinarily clear, and it was an intelligent response to my fumbling question. And there's no reason. I have no connection with Mary Todd Lincoln, to my knowledge. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And I've brought through Spirit Box. Now, here's the thing also, though, to be perfectly honest, just because she responded intelligently, that she responded to the name Mary Todd Lincoln, we don't have proof that it's Mary Todd Lincoln. I feel it is, but that doesn't mean that, I don't know if that's enough to be like 100%. But I can say with certainty that I got an intelligent response from someone with a female voice, which is great. And so I feel like that once you start doing that, so I started trying to bring through all sorts of people, like people I should have no business trying to bring through. And so you end up with, I thought, well, if I had Lincoln in, why don't I have Booth come through? And he did. And he wouldn't talk to the Spirit Box about the assassination, but he would talk about his acting career. And then he wouldn't leave my house. And I also have brought through aliens on my Spirit Box, and this is where it gets weirder. And once again, that's intention. That was the intention. I didn't want spirit to come through. I wanted aliens to come through. I wanted a gray to come through. I had tried before and nothing happened. And so I was, one time I was absolutely determined. I was in my kitchen and I'm like, I'm going to get them coming through my Spirit Box. The problem with this intention, though, was I wanted them so bad they actually came into my house. And so, you get this thing where if you ever seen the movie Signs and there's like the shimmering, I was getting that in my house. And there is a moment that I'll never forget when the spirit box starts going faster than it should. It's at its fastest sweep speed. And for those who don't know, it's like, but this is going much faster than it should. And at some point I asked some question, and the response was, "We're coming." And I said, "Are you coming to Earth? Or are you coming for me?"
What's that mean?
They responded, "For you." They're like, "For you." And that was a turning point. And then people started to feel ill watching, including myself. And so I'm getting in the comments like, "What's happening? I don't feel right. I don't feel good." All this stuff. And I always think, and so, people are like, "Don't do this stuff in your house." And I would agree with that. And yet here I am doing it in my house. One of the great examples of how this, works is if Linus is around, that means it's pretty safe. But Linus was, of course, nowhere to be seen. As a matter of fact, I didn't see him until the next day, because after the session, I was talking to a couple friends and my phone died. Their phones died. And I don't mean like, "Oh, we're out of power, battery." I had to go get a new phone. And then the next day I'm sitting there and I'm doing I'm working from home, and all of a sudden I get this nosebleed. All of a sudden blood just comes out of my nose. And the whole night there was something, and maybe it's just my overactive imagination, but there was something in the room, my bedroom in the corner, just watching me the whole night. You could just feel it. And once again, no sign of Linus, no sign of anything like that. The stuff that you need to feel good about yourself, they are gone. They're long gone. And that was one of the first times that I communicated with what I believe were grays, actually.
So what did you do then?
Cried. No, I
I'm like spellbound. Then what happened?
I believe once you establish that contact, they never leave you alone. Like you are now on the list. And so that started a period of time that was a very kind of, I don't want to say dark, but it was a very difficult time. And that lasted for a period of time, a few months. And then I had COVID, which that was a different sort of COVID than I would have expected. It nearly killed me. And, I had a lot of people who are in the metaphysical community telling me that there is a sharp connection between myself and two other friends who have had alien experiences at different times in their lives, that suddenly I have now completed that connection. And these are people who are not necessarily close friends with these other people. It's just that this is where it went. And so it's like an ongoing thing. And I've now done a number of CE5 experiments, which is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I talk about it a lot on my show about trying to, because a Close Encounters of the Third Kind is like seeing the ship and be like, "Oh, ship." Fifth Kind is getting them to like be face to face with them. And so, and we did one about 3 months ago, with once again, frightening results. It was like there's a moment of wondering, and this is like the intention setting, was this a responsible thing to do, at the end of the day? Because I had a friend with me. Is this responsible? Is this a smart thing to do? If I just put myself and my friend, is it danger, or is it abduction? Whatever it is, he totally agreed to do it. It wasn't like I just, kidnapped him and like, we're doing a CE5, but it was, it's still like, I'm the one that's putting this forward. And we were seeing stuff I personally have never seen before in my life.
Well, did it have a positive outcome? Meaning, did you have some sort of spiritual growth from it? Was there any goal that you had in mind to accomplish with this communication? What was the end goal?
I think the end goal would have been an understanding. And the end goal also is there is time last year that I was out with friends, Shar, Denise, and Ernie Pack over in their place in West Point, Kentucky, and we saw Bigfoot. And it wasn't because we're going, in the woods looking for an animal. It was because it was through intention that Bigfoot appeared. Because Bigfoot, for lack of a better term, they've been calling them forest people, forest friends, but their belief was that, along with another person who they've done a lot of work with, and he's really the person that does this, Greg Yost. It became very clear that it wasn't because they're hiding in a tree or hiding under some leaves in the forest, is that they're coming through a portal because you asked for them. And that became a kind of an obsession for me personally when we're talking about intention and talking about the fact that suddenly for me, and I'm sure I'm late to the table here, but suddenly to me it became clear that we're looking at the way that we want to reach out to spirit is no different than how we want to reach out to Bigfoot or how we want to reach out to aliens, because it's all energy and it's all intention. So you can now take it to a different level of it. You're just saying who you want. And we've tried this on multiple occasions in different areas. And what we found, and when I say we, is myself and my friends, we have found doing this that every single time something happens that we cannot explain, that is not like, oh, it's, oh, well, if something snapped a twig in the forest, it could be like a squirrel, or it could be a whatever. It's much more than that. It's deeper than that. And that's where it's starting to be the payoff of, like, suddenly I feel like that we are all on a plane that we don't realize that we're on, and that we need to be able, we need to explore it more and hone it.
Have you ever heard of the Robert Monroe Institute? I've taken the Gateway program for remote viewing twice. Yeah. And the late Robert Monroe started this program back in, I think, the 60s. And he says his motto is, we are more than our physical body. And because we're more than our physical body, we can reach this other spirit world for guidance, for self-help, for just about anything. We can tap into that spirit realm for information that would benefit us in some way. So what you said about communicating with Lincoln or with, I just said, well, we can't communicate with celebrities. Well, I'm probably wrong on that if you put it in those terms. And even the work of Napoleon Hill, I think it's Think and Grow Rich, maybe, is the book.
Okay.
If you've read that book, he wanted to accomplish something, and I forget what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to write a book, maybe, or something along those lines. And what he did was, to finish this book, he called forth, like you're doing with Lincoln and his wife, who was a medium, by the way.
Yeah.
And what he did was he called in, like, all of these people. I think Tesla was one of them. It was like all these engineers to help him on this project. And every night, that's what he would do. He would channel these different people, and he would picture them in a boardroom around him, giving him guidance. So what you just said really mimics that. And I bet for listeners out there, try this. If try, don't call in evil spirits and things like that, but
don't try to reach out to Hitler being your first one. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. But you hear about musicians doing this all the time. Artists do it all the time. Writers are always doing this sort of thing. I don't know.
I agree. And that's just it. And it maybe even goes back to kind of what you said earlier too, about maybe start with family members, but then, but of anyone of interest, and that you think that is obtainable, because there's people like I've tried, like, say, Walt Disney, and got nothing. And doesn't, maybe because they don't want to talk to us, or they don't, be all sorts of reasons. But I'd also say, if it doesn't work, don't stop. Just try and also close out your session. Just be respectful, do your protection, whatever you need to do, and have a little bit of fun with it. But then when it's done, make sure everyone knows it's done. And that's just it. And I would also recommend too, if you're going to go out into a forest and start asking for Bigfoot, that you might want to be a little careful. We did that a few weeks ago at a location, and it was my friend Char and I, and it became like we are just walking around in the forest. We don't know what's in the forest at all. And I don't even mean animals. I mean, who knows if there's some other person here that, hiding or whatever else. And, so it's like, I'm not a gun person, but it's like, well, maybe I need to bring some mace or something, just be careful out there. I don't want to find out that someone lost an arm or something out there. And I said, well, Greg said, just go out to the forest and, Bigfoot's there. I want you all to be careful trying anything like that, because it's a lot, but also you have to believe that it can happen. You can't go out there and be like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. Any aliens here?
Yeah.
You have to really.
It's all about intention.
Well,
Greg,
intention.
We're at the bottom of the hour. Where can people find you?
Right here. No, I do a nightly radio show on AM950 called GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, which you have been a guest on, which was a great and great experience. And we podcast it on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, all the places. Over on Facebook, you can find me at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Like I said, we're on 5 nights a week. When we're done here, I'm going to get ready for my show at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. So it's a lot of fun. I love doing it.
Well, Greg, thank you for being on. For your listeners out there, please go watch Greg. He's about to go on, and I'm going off. You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained and mystical and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas, and you'll see me again next week at 6:15 p.m. I just wanted to put out there real quick, for a very short time, I am doing spirit art sessions. I don't do these very often. They're on my website at clthomas.org. To sign up, there's very limited space. I'm only doing them until the 15th of December. So once those spots sell out, I don't do them very often again. So until next week.